Yes, why don't you do the roll call and then I'll put that on the record. Thank you for reminding me.
Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's a special meeting of the City Council. If everyone can please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America and to the republic.
Karen, can you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Feist,
Here.
Councilmember Reardon,
Here.
Councilmember Sirk,
Here.
Mayor Gunzelman.
Here.
And I have on record that Councilmember Swift has had a conflict and is abstaining from this meeting.
Thanks, Karen. That takes us to the public forum. At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items not appearing on the agenda. Comments may not exceed 5 minutes. In accordance with state law, however, no action or discussion may take place on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Would anyone care to comment on something not on tonight's agenda? Hearing nobody, we're going to move on to the public hearing before us tonight. We're going to start with a staff report.
Yes, good evening and thank you. So tonight before you, there are the following applications: a vesting tentative subdivision map for Broadmeadows Estates, a draft mitigated negative declaration, an application for a general plan amendment, and an application for pre-zoning. This item was originally reviewed by the Planning Commission at their July 8th, 2024 meeting. The Planning Commission could not make the necessary findings to approve the vesting tentative subdivision map and therefore did not recommend approval of the general plan or the pre-zoning. On July 15th, 2024, the applicant appealed the Planning Commission's decision, and that is why this is before you this evening. So a little bit of history on the project. The Broadmeadows Estate subdivision was Unit 4 of Golden Hills Estate subdivision, which was a 4-unit subdivision approved about 20 years ago. The first unit had 5 units. The second unit had 31 homes. The third unit, also now known as Panner Creek, had 38 homes. And then Broadmeadows Unit 4 was 10 homes. Unit number 1 was completed by the developer. Unit number 2 was partially completed by the developer and then was foreclosed upon, and the bank finished the rest of that project. And the maps for Unit 3 and 4 expired, and all development agreements expired with those. So they have been sitting for the last, 10, 15 years as expired projects. And about 5 years ago, the applicant came back with both Units 3 and 4, Broadmeadows and Panner Creek, to reactivate them or reapply as new applications. During that time, it was requested that they combine the environmental on the projects and that, or to separate the projects completely and only work on one or the other. So they have chosen to move forward with Broadmeadows at this time, and Panner Creek is currently on hold. So the project in front of you tonight, Broadmeadows Estate, consists of a 10-lot subdivision. It's a little under a 3-acre area of land. A little over 2 of those acres are outside of the city limits and currently are zoned RE, which is residential estates in the county. And the portion inside the city limits is zoned R1. The applicant is requesting a general plan amendment to change the land use designation of the area outside of the city limits to residential or R1 and the pre-zoning of R1. So once a project is annexed in, a property is annexed in, it's either annexed in with the zoning that it currently has, or you would have to wait 2 years to change the zoning. So the way that it is done, you do the pre-zoning and then annex in. So like I said, they're requesting an annex, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to some more details on the lots. A 10 lot, they're proposing 10 lots varying in size from about 9,500 square feet to 17,000, a little over 17,000 square feet. The minimum lot size required in the R1 zoning district is 7,000 square feet. So they do meet all of the requirements of the R1 zoning district as the lots are proposed. If you visited the site, the street improvements, some of the street improvements are in, some of the utilities are in. The other side of the street has been developed, and that was, I believe, Unit 2 of the subdivision. And the 10 lots that are currently there have had some rough grading done. There's some debris. There is one tree on lot 5 that is being proposed for removal, which is a 30-inch blue oak tree. The applicant has proposed to replace a tree on each one of the 10 lots. Yeah, so those are what the lots, how they exist currently. As I've mentioned, the applicant is requesting annexation into the city. So once the pre-zoning, or if the pre-zoning is approved, then they will go to LAFCO. LAFCO is the body that would initiate or the annexation process, and they would come back to the city then, once that is done, and the city would accept the land into the city. During that process, there is some negotiation that goes on with the county, and we can go into a little bit more detail about this. So the property tax lost from the county has to be made up by the city for a certain period of time. So this is a vacant lot right now. We'll just use the $1,000. Let's say it's $1,000 a year in property tax. The city has to figure out how to switch some property taxes around so that for the next X amount of years, the county would not lose that money. And then the city would get obviously the new property taxes, which would be much higher if lots are developed than a vacant lot. So.
Aaron, how many years, or is that also negotiable?
Derek, do you know how many years?
I believe it's 2.
That varies. That's negotiable with the county.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a question before you move on from
Yeah.
the zoning. If the council were to do the pre-zoning now at this vested tentative map
Uh-huh.
stage, and the project did not happen, then we had pre-zoned to R1 this area that would possibly remain in the county if the project and the annexation didn't happen, and possibly allow the county to develop whatever they wanted there with R1. Would the pre-zoning stick if the annexation didn't happen?
So the pre-zoning is a city designation and not the county designation. So the county's what it's saying is if this land becomes part of the city, it comes in as R1. If it doesn't come into the city, it remains that county designation.
This is in our sphere of influence, so the county really couldn't, without going through some LAFCO proceedings, the county really could not develop. It's the idea is that it's in our sphere of influence, it's not annexed yet, but the idea is it will annex, and it's better to come into the city. So for some, and I'm not suggesting the county wants this or would want to develop it, but if for some reason there was a desire to do that, they'd have to go and essentially remove the sphere of influence designation from that property.
How much into the weeds are we going to go? Or, I don't want to cut your presentation off, but as you go from topic to topic, we have questions. Would you prefer that we wait till you're?
No, we can
Done.
go, we can
Okay.
stay on topic to
Okay.
topic. That works.
So
for me.
regarding the pre-zoning,
Uh-huh.
going into single family for the city, correct?
Yes, R1.
Is there any opportunity that could ever be changed before the development starts?
So if the pre-zoning, let's say the council says yes to the pre-zoning, and then the applicant comes back before they start the development and asks for R2 instead, that's what
Mhm.
you're asking.
Correct.
It would go through the same process. It wouldn't be pre-zoning then because it would be in the city, but it would be a rezone.
Okay, so they would, the developer would have to come back to the city for approval.
Yes.
On the on the potential annexation, I had just a couple of questions also then. I think what I read was that the annexation would have to be successful in order for the project to meet final approval, the map.
Yes.
Is that correct? I
Yes.
just want to get clear.
And Karen, could you bring up the annexation map? There you go. So we can, I can just, if we want to look at that real quick, that's I think everyone knows where the project location is. Yeah, so here's the annexation map. So you can see the portion that's inside the city and outside the city. And what is interesting about this is that where the road falls. So it's really just that corner of Broad Meadows and Golden Hills that's in the city.
So with the transition of property taxes, rather going to the city, they will remain with the county? Or the property taxes will come into the city and the county will bill us for those property taxes?
No,
How
well,
is that?
So what happens is right now, the property tax out there is pretty negligible because it's vacant. So what happens is, obviously, when you put homes out there, the property taxes go way up. And so optimally, the county would continue to receive the share that it receives now for some period of time. The city would get the increment being
The difference
the
between?
difference between, the developed and undeveloped land. But it gets complicated because counties typically have services and other things that they attribute to these properties. And so it's going to be something that we would have to address through negotiation. Even though I've been your city attorney for 15 years, we've never had to do this because we just really have not had an annexation that I can remember. That was all happening previously to my
So
tenure.
is it even possible the county could say, well, we received $2,000 in property taxes, but now, because of the development that's going to jump up, they could ask for more than just that $2,000 that was
Ye-
originally theirs?
It's all subject to negotiation. So,
Huh.
I mean, we have the ability to say no. They have the ability to say no. The idea is revenue neutrality, that when you annex, you're taking land away from the county. That land generates tax revenue for the county. But here, that land is vacant. So, I'm assuming that we will be reasonable in our negotiations. I'm assuming the county will be reasonable in their negotiations. And so really the property tax revenue should come to us because we are the ones who are going to have to provide for police service. We are the ones that are going to have to provide for municipal services. We're going to have to maintain roads, sidewalks. We're going to have to basically provide their municipal government. So, and also on top of that, we are doing CFDs and other things to make sure we pay for everything. So I think my sense is the annexation piece does require a little bit of faith at this point, but this happens all across the state. Counties and cities negotiate these transition agreements. There's a method to them. We've dealt with the county administrative office and county council over the years and other things through, with Amy and even going back to Sean. I remember meetings with Sean, and we should be fine. It's not an issue. I don't think fiscally there really are concerns. I mean, I understand there may be some other concerns the council has, but I think fiscally we're not going to be putting ourselves in some sort of deficit by agreeing to this.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to hear. Thank you.
And between Sutter Creek Fire Protection District and AFD, would it also go through the same negotiation process or?
Well, this would be within the fire district's jurisdiction. I think it already is.
I don't think it is.
It's not, okay.
I don't-
Okay, no, yes, I think LAFCO, no, as part of the review, LAFCO would, if there's special districts LAFCO, I would assume, would put it in with Amador Fire Protection District because that's who serves Sutter Creek. That would be my best.
Sutter Creek Fire Protection.
Sutter Creek
District.
Fire Protection, excuse me.
Yeah, and I've met with the executive director of LAFCO regarding this project, and that was one of his comments, is that we would have to what's it called? Separate from Amador Fire Protection District and go into Sutter Creek Fire Protection District.
On the subject of annexation, then I just have another question. With regards to this applicant or any applicant petitioning a city to annex property, are there particular guidelines in terms of, does there need to be demonstrated a need or that kind of thing? What occurs to me is that, like last year, for instance, there wasn't one new home built in Sutter Creek. And I'm also aware that there are lots, no pun intended, buildable today. So from a needs perspective, does any of that come into this? I mean, is the city obligated to annex, or is it at our pleasure?
Well, I mean, you're not obligated to annex, but you're also not obligated to approve the project. So,
Certainly.
right, I mean, I can't really see a situation where you would agree to entitle the project, but you would oppose it being annexed, because if it never gets annexed, your entitlements are meaningless.
Right. I was just trying to
Yeah.
segregate the issues a little bit to understand what the normal guidance is on when people require
it's-
or ask for
yeah,
annexation.
It's more about optimization of municipal services. You know,
Mhm.
LAFCO will want to know that there are services that can be provided and that they're being provided optimally. So I think LAFCO would not want to prejudice anyone, prejudice any agency, or leave gaps. And so as part of its review, it would do a municipal service review, and it would make sure that, there's adequate fire, water, ambulance,
Right.
sheriff, or law enforcement. And I mean, that's all part of what it would do.
Mhm. Thank you.
And then another process background kind of question. In reading the appeal from the applicant, the appeal was based on the fact that the planning commission only considered the tentative map and not the other two items, is what I read, the zoning and the pre-zoning and the annexation. Is that correct?
Pre-zoning and general plan amendment.
Okay, so back to my first question, when we talked about the zoning, it wouldn't make sense to me to approve or do the pre-zoning without approving the project first.
Yeah.
So whenever you do land use, I mean, when you do land use projects like this, you're always going to be, you're often going to be dealing with multiple, what we call entitlements, but think of them as a package. You start with at the very top, which is your general plan, and then you get to your zoning, and those are your legislative approvals, and then you get to the site-specific approvals, which are your maps. And then there's other types of site-specific approvals. Here, what the Planning Commission was required to do is, number one, they are required to make a decision on the map. So in our code, Planning Commission makes decisions on maps. Exceptions to planning or map standards come to the council. So I don't believe there were exceptions,
No.
but the council, the Planning Commission is a recommending body when it comes to your general plan and your zoning. That's how it's called the state planning and zoning law. Our state law says that when you have a zone change or a zoning ordinance or a zoning regulation or a general plan, an amendment to a policy of a general plan or an amendment to a designation of a general plan, those are legislative actions that only the council can take. So I was not at the Planning Commission meeting. I did look at their record. It was a little bit spotty because I think they focused on the map. And I believe that they were also required to give recommendations one way or the other. And so I think the best way to look at it is that the Planning Commission recommended against the general plan amendment and it recommended against the zoning. It's a little gray, but I think if you look at the spirit of what they did, they were telling you, the council, in our opinion, this is not a good project. They gave you reasons why, And so I think you should interpret that as a recommendation against. Now, you're probably going to want to take public testimony, but just so we maybe set the table for what you can do tonight, one action would be to approve the project. So, you could approve the general plan, you could approve the zoning ordinance, you can approve the map. So that would be on sort of one end. The other end is you could say, we're not going to approve anything. So we're just not going to deny, we're going to deny the project altogether. But you could also, if you need more time tonight, after you hear everything, you could continue the item and direct staff to bring more back to you. Another option would be, and I'm just painting this out, I'm not saying you should do this, is you send it back to the planning commission and you say, we'd like you, or we'd like you to look more at this issue. You have that ability to send something back to the planning commission if you think maybe they didn't give you a square recommendation, or you want them to do more work. So those are your options.
Two issues and questions that I have, Derek, is one, I think, what are we really voting on? Are we voting on, and you just answered that. So I'm a little more clear on that. Second is, I think we need to have resolved the issue between what was maybe not seen by the planning commission versus what they really approved, and why the appeal is here. So I would like to see that issue resolved between the developer and the planning commission.
Well, I think you should
I don't know
take
if we can do
testimony
that.
first, but I
Yes.
just put that out there. That is an option. You could send it back. You would call it a remand. You remand it back to the planning commission. But I think if you do that,
But if
you
we
should-
can hear it here tonight, that's what I would like
Yes,
to do.
yeah, but you could say, listen, we heard testimony tonight. We want the planning commission to go back and look at X, Y, and Z and give us their opinion on X, Y, and Z. And then Aaron and I can take that
Yeah.
to them and get their,
If we can
Thanks.
clear up as many discrepancies, because one way or the other, it's probably going to come back here anyway. So,
you can, I don't want to tell you, you have to do that. I do believe that procedurally, if the council were of the pleasure to approve this project, you could do that tonight. I do think that we are in a position to do that, but I'm just telling you that if you feel you're not ready to make a decision or you want more advisement from your recommending body, you are certainly entitled to have that.
okay. All right. Thank you, Derek.
Okay, so any other questions on annexation? Yes.
Yeah, but I just have a question. If you could speak to the details of the general plan amendment and kind of
Yes.
your opinion on
Yeah.
the impact of that.
Okay, so Karen, if you can scroll up to the land use maps, and we can just look at that. The next one. So as you can see, it's hard to see, actually, the area that's circled in red, so you can, they would be changing in the land use designation from my cheat sheet here. It goes from residential low density to residential single family. So that's the amendment that they're asking for in the general plan. It's just the land use designation. They're not asking for any policy or program amendments to the general plan. So that's just what that is. And it really is the change of the color on the map, as you can see, and then the land use policies that then go with that designation, and the zoning policies or zoning code that goes with that designation.
Just on that small piece circled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, where were we? So, as mentioned, they are not asking for any exceptions to the subdivision code. They have the required street frontage and lot size. And in approving a vesting tentative subdivision map, you need to review the required findings in chapter 17.12.10, and those are within the staff report. They're in the original planning commission staff report and the resolution. So those were actually the findings that the planning commission could not make. But able to approve this, you have to make the following those findings. And I won't go through them all unless you would like me to, but they are in the resolution. Let's see. This project also has a draft mitigated negative declaration that was prepared by the applicant, and it was circulated for 30 days as required by CEQA. So it was circulated in October, the end of October 2023. The document proposes 7 mitigation measures, and most of them are pretty generic mitigation measures, regarding air quality, human remains, if they're discovered, what happens then, things like that. There is, I think, yes,
Give us a page in the.
Yeah, if you give us page numbers, I think we can.
yes, let me see. Oof, is that not it?
50 something.
And packet page numbers, huh? Packet page numbers.
17?
That's packet, page number 17?
Yeah.
Also, during that time period, the project was sent out to the local tribes for review, and we did not receive, the only comments were received was to keep the tribes informed of decisions being made on this project. The application was also reviewed by other internal departments and external agencies, and any conditions of approval have been incorporated into the project conditions of approval.
On that, a condition number 10, the CFD
Yes,
on page 69 in the packet, I think in the neg deck, it says, no thanks. It says it's not feasible to do a CFD for 10 lots. And it's proposed that homeowners would join a citywide CFD if that were to happen.
yeah, so that should not be in there like that. The recommendation of staff is that if this is approved, then they will create a CFD. So we'll make sure in the final M&D, if it is accepted, that that would be taken out. Or the strike through would be taken out.
Unstruck.
Yes. So I think that is,
Oh, one more.
yeah.
18 was a drainage study.
Mm-hmm.
I was just unclear on when that happens.
So that would be done prior to the recording of the final map, once the improvements are in. So a lot of the improvements are already in up there, but any storm drains that need to be put in, things like that. So that's incorporated there. Any other questions? So I think that kind of goes over the background of the project kind of at a high level. If anyone has any other project specific questions, obviously I can answer them. The project planner, Bruce Bracco, is here, who can also answer some of those questions. But I think Derek's kind of explained what the process is here, but please ask clarifying questions as needed. So
I do have a question, and I'm not sure if it's to you or to Bruce when he gets a chance, but it has to do with, I'm a little fuzzy about the piecemealing notion and the CEQA guidance around that. Because as I read what was presented to me, it looked like, at least historically in this document, there was some concern that by separating the projects, that creates a piecemealing situation. And my own sense of the matter, as I thought about the homes up there and the number of people, and, it felt like it was piecemealing.
Yeah.
Also, can we have 100% assurance that CEQA is not going to come back and say, wait a minute, you're violating the spirit of piecemealing? And
yeah, Derek can speak to that.
yeah,
Yes, and it's a good question. So I think the council is wise to be concerned about piecemealing, and ultimately it's your call tonight. What staff believes is that, first of all, there's a condition, it's condition 13, that basically says that we cannot final the map if they submit a new application, or if an application is submitted for Panner Creek. So they run a serious risk if they were to do that, because if they do that, we're not finaling their map. And so just, as the council understands, we approve the vesting tentative map. They have to do a whole host of things to get their final map and to be able to actually create lots. And so they have that sword over their head, which is if they go file an application, or if, someone else files an application for that development, then we're not going to issue a map.
5 years from now, if they file it?
Correct.
10 years from now?
Well-
So the map is only valid, this map
Yeah.
is valid for 2 years. They can ask for an extension.
Right.
But, yeah, so if in 18 months, they're almost done with their map and they drop off an application for Panner Creek,
Right.
we'll go back and say, we're not going to accept this application because you have not finished this other project first.
Right, but let me ask the question this way. Regardless of the time frame, if at some point Panner Creek comes back into the conversation and is in fact developed, isn't that fact, along with us pulling this apart at this point and approving this without a full-on EIR, just a negative deck, isn't that contrary to what CEQA is trying to promulgate?
In the abstract, yes. And that's why we had previously communicated the position staff did, because I was involved, and Aaron's predecessor, our previous city manager. I mean, we were very firm about that. I think the issue here is that what I don't want to do is also be too inflexible, because the other phase of that development, I mean, we're talking about something that was approved many, many years ago.
I understand.
And it was before the Great Recession. And I've seen in my practice as a land use lawyer, I've been practicing since 1999. So I've been a land use lawyer even before I was a municipal lawyer. And I saw the boom years from when I came out of law school in 99 till, 2007. And I saw the way land use, I mean, everyone was entitling everything. And then things changed. And what at least staff feels is that it is worthwhile presenting to the council the option for this developer to be able to salvage some of the development through Broadmeadows, which is really just 10 units. I think staff has serious concerns about, or doubts, I should say, about whether the Panner Creek could ever be developed. I mean, the bridge and the steepness and the terrain and the issues, I'm not saying that the developer someone shouldn't buy that and hold it, because at some point it might become feasible, but I think staff has serious doubts that Panner Creek is ever going to pan out, unintended. So we didn't want to be so inflexible that we could not present something to you, the council. So we are cognizant and concerned about piecemealing, but we think the way we have proposed to basically put the sword over the applicant's head, which is if you come and you drop another application on us, then we're not going to final your map. I think that's a way that we feel we can, in a good faith way, deal with the issue. That's staff's position. At the end of the day, it's your position as a council to make that call. I mean, we wanted to present something to you that you could consider.
Fair enough.
But, this project is unique in that the first two stages, the conditions weren't fulfilled all the way. And it appears that hope of some conditions being met that would complete part 1, 2, and 3, or phase 1, 2, 4, whatever we're going to call it, are all in the last part that probably maybe won't ever happen. But yeah, okay. It still takes me back
No,
to, and I feel like that's what
That's fair.
Christie,
I-
in Christie's letter in 2022, she, laid out very clearly why it's a CEQA policy to not do it this way.
Yes.
So it would seem to be, it's to the developer's benefit to not have to do an EIR right now. I get that, to do a neg deck. But I feel like the city is putting itself at risk in this scenario.
Well, I do want to say this. I will just tell you this as 25 years practicing land use law. Things that happened before 2008, I don't think we'll see those again. I mean, maybe we will in 10 years. I don't know. But that was a different era. And so that the four-part project that was entitled was before that time. Sort of think of that as the before times. And now we're in the current times. I do think that this is a standalone, small project. It's 10 homes. And I don't think that we are prejudicing ourselves. If a developer can actually come forward and put a good program or an application together for the last piece, we would, I mean, I can't say what we would require now because we'd have to make that decision. But I mean, just putting my 2 cents out there, I don't see how we wouldn't do an EIR for that. So I don't want the
For
council to
Broadmeadows.
think, what's that, for Broadmeadows?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want the council to think we're not going to do it. No, Panner Creek, sorry, I mixed them up. So I mean, if Panner Creek actually goes forward, it's not, I mean, I think staff is anticipating that there will be a full-scale EIR on that.
My concern is similar to Mayor Gunselman in that that the promises given for when it was phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, and those didn't happen. How much flexibility can there be in a negotiation, say, okay, maybe Broadmeadows goes through, but the city wants the assurance that you're going to follow through. So we would like you to modify maybe those 10 units, maybe provide one of the units as a park or open space. Given that Panner Creek is years and years down the line, residents there have lived there years and years with the broken promises. Is it negotiable on saying, hey, can we fit some of what you agreed to for 1 and 2 into 4 here, into Broadmeadows, and make it livable and make it a winnable situation for everyone?
We have to be careful in that we cannot over-exact and over-condition the project. We have, and there's actually a very recent United States Supreme Court decision involving El Dorado County that shows where the Supreme Court is going with exactions, conditions, and other things. If you're looking more broadly, we have to only condition the project for what it's actually going to do.
Intended to do.
So, I mean, I don't think we would have the legal authority to sort of penalize someone by
Well,
saying,
we're not
"Look,"
penalizing
yeah.
if it hasn't gone through yet.
Right, no,
I'm
no.
just
But I-
asking how flexible can this project be to make it more of a win-win-win for
Well, I
all
don't-
parties involved?
I mean, you're dealing with 10 houses. So, is there a reduced project that we could, you could ask the planning commission to go back and look at a reduced project if you feel it's too much? I mean, that's something that would be within your authority tonight. What I don't want to do is start sucking in things that aren't impacts that are created by this
Yeah.
particular
No,
project.
and I understand that. I just needed to have a process if
yeah.
that explains.
I mean, that would be,
okay.
I mean, if you can't approve the project as presented, the developer would have the ability to revise the project,
Yeah,
scale it
that's what I
back.
was gonna say. So, yeah, if that was the case, you would be providing feedback to them and then the project would come back revised.
And so we're not looking at this as project 3, right? We're looking this as a new standalone project.
It is a new standalone project, just that for
Right.
background and history, at one point it was considered unit number 4 of the Golden Hills subdivision.
But it's only standalone if we let it stand alone, because technically it's still attached to Panner Creek,
Well, no,
as
because,
CEQA would like it to be.
well, in approval wise, units 3 and 4 have expired. Those maps have expired. The development agreements, the subdivision agreements have all expired.
So it's a
The
new
CEQA is the
project.
question mark.
You're starting from, I mean, you are starting from scratch, but you're not, because there's obviously a history. But technically, we are starting from a blank slate. The question from a CEQA standpoint is, what we have to do is we have to consider the impacts of one project in association with all reasonably foreseeable projects. So the question factually for the council to weigh in your decision tonight is some other development in the Panner Creek part reasonably foreseeable?
Right.
Staff's position is that, yes, there's a desire out there to develop that. The, you know, applicants, that's owned, or I think there's some overlap between the people applying tonight and the people who would apply for that. But staff feels that, given the extensive history of that site, given how extraordinary the demands are with the steepness and the terrain, given the cost of that bridge, is it really likely? I think staff feels that you could make the decision that it is not reasonably foreseeable that that is a project that is going to come forward at any time in the realistic future. But just to be on the safe side, we have given you condition 13, which says they cannot move forward with an application during the time. It might take 18 months, 2 years for them to do all this stuff, maybe longer. Their map is, I think, 3 years, correct? 2 years. So they have 2 years to final their map, although they would be able to seek, state law does provide extensions. So that's staff's position, but that's staff's position. Ultimately, the council has to make the final call.
And while we can't consider the history and what exactly did or didn't happen in 1 or 2, we can certainly consider this as 10 homes, the end of a cul-de-sac at the end of a neighborhood, but it's the end of a incomplete neighborhood because things did not happen.
So kind of following up with Claire then, if I have specific questions about the neg deck and how it responds in terms of consistency or inconsistency with the general plan, I have in fact 3 of those concerns. Is now the time that I bring that up? I'm just not sure about how all this works.
Yeah, I think so.
Should we have public comment first?
Let me, I'd feel more comfortable if we put everything we've got on the table.
I think you should put out all your questions
Yeah.
for staff
Okay.
and then save the,
All
because you're going to get a lot of,
Well,
save it for deliberations.
So my questions are specifically, so in our package, on page 108, it's in that neg deck document, page 47. And it's Conservation and Open Space Policy, COS-1.10.1. Now, the project itself has noted that they are not consistent with this particular one. And for the record, what this says is new development should be designed to maximize opportunities to limit automobiles distance traveled to local destinations and traffic congestion. It also applies to environmental justice. So in the neg deck, it says not consistent. It says at the present time, safe pedestrian and bicycle facilities are not available on either Sutter Creek Road or Gopher Flat Road. True that. At some point, pedestrian and bicycle travel may be feasible through the Sutter Crest subdivision if a pedestrian and bicycle path is constructed across the Powder House subdivision project. So I'm calling that out because in my mind, as a council person looking at that thing, that's one of those things that before I'd be comfortable saying, yes, let's move forward, I'd like to talk about that more with the developer in terms of, or going back to the planning commission or, whatever. The next one is on page 112 in our packet, and it's page 51 of the neg deck. And it's the circulation policy C-1.10.1. And it says bicycle lanes or paved shoulders should be provided on new arterial and collector roadway facilities unless separate bicycle routes are provided. It says it's consistent because Golden Hills Drive, a collector roadway, has paved shoulders. My question is this: is Gopher Flat not an arterial? Is that not a road that, because that's the one that is really missing everything. So I'm concerned about that, just for the record. And finally, on page 113 in the packet, or page 52 of the neg deck, there's policy C-1.10.8 that, quote, requires subdivisions to implement or fund as appropriate a bike system for children to ensure safe access to schools and parks within town. The negative deck, and I'm paraphrasing, says that it is consistent because it's going to be paying, park fees. But my concern about that is that a certain portion of that park fee is going to ACRA, and it doesn't really hold the developer's feet to the fire with regards to what it says in the general plan, about requiring appropriate bike system for children to ensure safe access to schools and parks. So I think I disagree with Bruce, all, respect to you, but I disagree that, in terms of it is consistent with the general plan. To me, that's not exactly consistent. Okay, I'll be quiet and let the rest.
I had the same ones. I would just add, there's two places in this that it refers back to Panner Creek and things that could possibly happen in Panner Creek to resolve these things, but we have nothing to consider because you just finished telling us that we're not considering that. I had the same items, also the CFD, which I already pointed out to you. And I lost my spot, but parking, as identified in the circulation element, it does affect that because anyone in that whole neighborhood that wants to go to school or farmer's market or anything else has to drive into town to park. So I would add that it doesn't meet that condition.
Besides those, and we're all thinking along kind of the same line. I just a clarification on page 103 under LU 2.1.1. The general plan was originally 2019, but it has and was reviewed in 2022, which to me is significant. There's 3 years more current of things to look at. The other is on page 113, referring to citywide community facilities district, which is mentioned throughout the document as, it has to be part of the facilities district is what will take in many of the concerns and be like an oversight. There is no community facilities district. So my question is, if Broadmeadows will be required to participate in the community services district, also referred to as a community facilities district, should one be formed. So my concern is, unless someone can,
So that is just some inconsistency in the neg deck. So the
Yes.
applicant is asking to not have to be required to form one. The city is recommending in the conditions of approval that one be required.
okay, so that's a point of contention then.
Yes, so that was originally part of the larger subdivision, and just to be honest, it makes more sense when you're approving 70 houses versus 10 houses. But since that is something that was not done prior, staff believes that it should be required for these 10 houses.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I found,
I had,
sorry,
I had one more on page 109, referring to general traffic impact fee change. Let me find it. I may not be able to find it. Well, it says the city will update the City of Sutter Creek Capital Improvement Program funding strategy as additional street improvement needs. But it says this policy, the responsibility, and it's presently not in the circulation element. That's C point 1 point, where is it? 3.3.
3.3, let me see if I can find that.
So I became questioning whether it is consistent if,
Still looking for exactly where that is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Want me to go ahead while you're looking?
Yeah, and no, I had one more. On that same page, C 1.1.1, the city shall require the dedication and construction of the easterly bypass collector road. Dedication, construction of a portion of the easter bypass collector road, Golden Hills Drive, proposed as the Panner Creek. So that's listed as a consistency. I would like clarified, it's the second sentence in the consistent paragraph. It says, for Broadmeadows Estates general traffic impact fee of, and it's struck out $4,202, $4,212.64 has been changed to $981 per single family dwelling. That's a big change.
And it looks, based on where the comma is there, the 1,000th digit looks like it is missing,
So,
since it's money sign, comma.
yeah, because
Let me just note
that's
it.
what I would suspect, but
Which page are you on, Julia?
that's on page
Oh,
109, the very top, the very first policy.
Uh,
And then given that these assigned fees were set in, I'm assuming that these fees came from the 2019 document, should they not be reviewed to make sure they're accurate and up to date with 2024 fees rates?
I think they have been. That was
Yeah,
the
that's what the strike throughs are. Because this was
Okay.
initially prepared in 2019 and then revised. This final revision is from the beginning of the January of this year.
Okay, given that the traffic impact fee increased from 1332 to 1575, would it be that the general traffic impact fee, the one that is misnumbered, would go from 4212 to 4981?
I don't know that number off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I would say that's probably either a 4 or a 5.
Okay. Okay, but I share the same concerns with safety then. And my point is, I understand the growth need for the city of Sutter Creek, that as long as it's responsible. Meadow Crest, where I reside, that was never followed through. The sidewalk that should have been extended down into town to connect an isolated community with the town was never completed. Project 1 and 2, Phase 1 and 2, will be just another isolated community from town unless there's at least a sidewalk that connects Golden Hills Drive to Meadowcrest. We're just creating another isolated community. And that blends in with the two concerns that Dan and Claire brought up. So that's my piece. Thank you.
Yeah, when did that idea of having a way to get to town walking or biking, when did the city not hold the developers accountable, or where did that
So-
fall out of it?
When the development agreement expired and the maps expired. So
But
they never came back to finish their projects. They received their tentative maps and that with the same 24-month period to get them complete. And I'm not sure if they asked for extensions or not, but eventually they just either stopped asking for extensions or kind of abandoned that project.
But they still got the final map.
No, the final map, the location where it would,
For Golden Hills, this is?
I think,
I
Susan, you're talking about 1 and 2, right? Yeah.
yes, so
The conditions
was on,
in 1, 2, 3, and 4, stupidly, were mainly put in
3.
4, which is not 4, it's 3.
Three
The,
is
the
Panner
one
Creek.
that's probably not happening is what all that was put into.
so the big costly conditions, the conditions that would cost the developer the most, which is a parkland dedication or a park, and the access to town and a bridge were part of the requirements for unit 3. And so the project died before that, they got to that phase.
Okay, and now we're dealing with different developers in theory.
It's the same property owners and developers, just with no existing entitlements or no existing approvals. They've all expired.
I had my last one before we move on. Page 123. Parks and Rec policy, neighborhood parks should be located within walking distance of the residents they are intended to serve. And again, this document for this project goes back to within Panner Creek Estates an anticipated future park. So, you know, even where I live, which you can't safely walk to town, there's Bryson Park. Everyone over here can get to this park, but everyone up there can't get to any park. So I would say it's inconsistent.
Or the
And it's
schools.
46 houses and the guideline is residential development projects of 50. And then if you add the rest of that part of town, you know, it's well over that.
So are those, how can those inconsistencies that we bring up here, can those go into
What I,
those being
Yeah,
recorded?
so I think what happens is you either can or cannot make the finding that this is consistent with the general plan.
Right.
And it sounds,
Okay.
I hear a few inconsistencies there. And so what I would recommend, and Derek can confirm this, is you would either say we cannot make these findings, therefore we cannot approve the project, or applicant, please go back, work with city staff to make your project more consistent with the general plan.
right. Certainly before we get there, Claire, I'd like to go back to your suggestion that we hear public comment perhaps now, and if there is response to the issues that we brought up from the project folks, I'd like to hear that. And
Well, this
anything
is
else that might
actually a
be-
public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing and the applicant can have the first opportunity to speak, and then we'll go to the public. I will remind everybody that during the public comment, it's not meant to be a dialogue. If you ask questions, we will try to answer them later, but you don't want my answer because that's not necessarily the right one. And staff's not going to stop for each one and the applicant won't have the opportunity. So Karen, if you could also help us, you know, make sure we capture any questions that are asked by the public that we haven't addressed tonight, we can catch them when it comes back to council.
One piece I mean, I don't know that we've ever really had in many years a contested land use hearing like this. Typically, the applicant is given the final word or a rebuttal.
Yep,
So I
sorry.
just want the applicant to know that he
Yeah.
will have that as well.
So we'll start with the applicant, we'll open it to the public, and there is a time limit. It's 5 minutes. Then we'll go back to the applicant and close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Do we need to vote to open the public hearing or just close it? Okay, public hearing is open.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Bruce Baracco, 44 Eureka Street, Sutter Creek. I'm the project planner for the Broad Meadows Estates project. Also on Zoom tonight, Dave Mabry and Frank Trujillo, who are the property owners for Broad Meadows, and Stan Gamble, who's the developer. At their meeting on July 8th, the Planning Commission chose to only consider the tentative subdivision map and made a finding that said that the map could not be approved. So there are 7 findings under both state law and by municipal code, city code, in which all positive findings must be made for all 7. So the one the commission chose not to consider in a positive manner was item A, which is that the proposed subdivision only, is not consistent with the general plan, any applicable specific, special, or community plan, or the city subdivision ordinance. So that was the basis for the Planning Commission's denial. All right, so tonight we're respectfully requesting that the City Council grant the appeal from David Mabry and Frank Trujillo, that you certify the initial study mitigated negative declaration, that you approve the vesting tentative map, approve the general plan amendment, and approve the pre-zoning. So let me start with a little story. And I'm sorry that Ed Swift is, that Jim Swift is not here this evening. Councilmember Jim Swift is not here because he's the only member of the city council that was around when the city undertook its general plan update process. So in 2019, as the city was preparing to finalize its general plan update and environmental document, we came to the city council to request that this property be designated single-family residential and have that included as part of the citywide general plan update. We were told at that time that the only way that this property could get general plan changed was through a formal application. So with good faith, we made that application. It consisted of a tentative map, general plan amendment, pre-zone, annexation, and environmental document. So here we are, right in the middle of the catch-22. Now, a lot of the things that have happened over the last 20 years, 25 years, let me put it in this context. There was a major project in this city called Gold Rush Ranch. All right, it came, it was controversial. It even went to an initiative on the ballot. It was barely approved. It sat around for a few years, and then the development agreement ran out and the project died. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, that is no longer a project. The city does call out land uses on its general plan, but there is no project. The same situation happened with Golden Hills. The original tentative map for Golden Hills Estates was approved by the Planning Commission on July 8th of 2002. Right? That included units 1, 2, and 3. 1 were the 5 lots on Ridgecrest. No improvements required. That map was finalized. Unit 2 consisted of the area of Golden Hills Drive, Silkworth, Broad Meadows Court, and Harrington. Thank you, Harrington Court, the one I can never remember. They're all English. Those subdivision improvements for Unit 2 were completed. All right. And then in the midst of the construction of the homes on that unit, Unit 2, the downturn hit, the developer lost the property, and that was the end of it. In the meantime, and as part of that, because the subdivision agreement included units 1, 2, and 3, and that was recorded on April 20th of 2005. So during that period of 2005 to 2008, the subdivision improvements for Unit 2 were all completed, and the subdivision improvements for Unit 3 were initiated, were started, including a grading permit to rough grade the site, which included the extension of Golden Hills Drive. So that's where that property sits today. Trees have been removed. Some rough grading has been done, and no further activity has occurred. So the maps have expired. Those projects are dead. And I think, as was mentioned, we're bringing these back as new projects. Whole new ball game, have to follow all the new rules, have to follow the 2019 general plan and the whole bit. So I'll be glad if I can get rid of this fly. I'll be glad to answer any questions or also be available a little later on.
Bruce, if you could stay available, we'll let these folks ask their questions and see if there's any you can answer at the end.
Good,
Does
thanks.
that sound fair?
Can we ask?
It's a public hearing.
Got-
Okay. Who's first?
Mike Kirkley, Sutter Creek. The reason why I wanted to go first is I'm on the planning commission, and I think the difficult thing on the planning commission, and I brought this up to staff, is when a project is brought forward with it, we have all the steps you need to do to approve it. But if you decide that you don't want to approve it, you're not always given good guidance on what are all the I's you have to dot and the T's you need to cross. And it was kind of frustrating. Years ago, when I was on the planning commission, we had a planner at the time, and staff would give you the alternatives. And I think Derek has given you alternatives here tonight. I think the one thing, I can speak for myself, but I think it was overriding concern with the other commissioners were, and I'll start with the preamble of the general plan, or one of the conditions in the general plan, is infill is encouraged. And what we saw, or I saw, is you've got another project that wants to be annexed, and you have infill with Panner Creek that's already in the city limits that is not, there's no map there to move forward and do that first, and then maybe revisit this at a later time if there's a need for annexation for additional housing. I'll let the fly speak next, if you don't mind. And so that was part of it. And then the other thing in the general plan, and my history goes back a long time. I worked on the general plan in 1988, and on the original plan that hasn't changed dramatically from those early days. And the other thing it says is any new development will be economically feasible and not drain the resources of the city. And so you have this infill. I made these same comments on the planning commission during Gold Rush. Why would you annex 1,000 acres into the city when you have all these undeveloped properties? You know, acres and acres. We did an inventory. I think Bruce at the time did an inventory of all the lots that could be built already prior to Gold Rush. Those all still exist, and Gold Rush has got 1,400 more homes. Gold Rush now is an infill project. That's 1,000 acres already in the city limits. And I know at first blush, this project looks, oh, it's 10 lots, it's on the other side of the subdivision, already existing, the roads there and everything. And I get it. I get that. But the thing is, you're trying to be consistent in how you develop and do good planning. And some of that thing you're talking about and your concerns about is connectivity to your city and the infrastructure that needs to be built. And it never got built. And all the people that live out there are going, what are we, chopped liver? Who's going to assure that we get these amenities through this development that we were promised? And you have the potential to do it again. You say, it's just 10 lots. Staff's telling you it's just 10 lots. No big deal. It's the inconsistency in how you grow. And then the other thing, I know Julie was real concerned about economics. I appreciate that. I've done research. Do you know what the county gets right now of your current property tax in the city, of all your lots, all your houses? 32%. The school district gets about 62%. Sutter Creek, and I went to the county auditors trying to get more definite information. The way they divide it up, I don't know if Claire's looking at this. 4.4. If a $700,000 home is sold on that lot, you get $280 a year in property taxes. And I'm glad, I've mentioned CFDs before. The fire district got them. You know, they got every lot, they get another $500 or $600 a year that goes to the district. The city gets a goose egg right now. So you don't have to worry about negotiating with the county. They already took the lion's share of your property tax base anyway. And they provide you services. I'm not saying you're not getting any services out of that. So all those things are, are rolling around the back of my mind. And I think what I asked myself, why do we need to annex more area into Sutter Creek? And I know Bruce has probably got what was documented in, by the city clerk who was in North Carolina. I don't know, whatever was documented. And maybe that wasn't articulated well. That's why I got up and spoke first on this. But you've got all these things going on. You're going to be, I've heard rumblings that 900 lots is coming into Gold Rush 2, all this big demand for housing and development. And I think Dan pointed out that we had one house built last year.
That's
No.
5 minutes.
That 5 minutes is expired.
So, but you know, that doesn't really matter. If there's a demand, there's a demand. And, but I think if you're gonna keep approving things, you better start looking about the economics. You're already talking about a sales tax increase. And you know, Dan assures me that your general fund budget is sustainable and everything's peachy keen. I don't believe that. So, but if it makes you sleep better at night, I'm all with you there, Dan.
Your 5 minutes is up.
Okay. So anyway, so I'll leave it at that. So those are some of the rationale that was going through my mind. I can't speak for all the planning commissioners, but it was 4-0.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cunha. I live at 425 Harrington Court in Golden Hills. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is, since these are two separate projects, Panner Creek and Broad Meadows, it seems as though Panner Creek keeps popping up in their application. So I question that. And then also, we've been talking about the Panner Creek project and staff's opinion that both projects together would require an EIR. And by splitting the two projects, it is clearly an attempt to circumvent CEQA. Therefore, if he is allowed to piecemeal these projects, the city should ensure that the developer is required to pay all costs associated with any lawsuits that might result from this annexation. And there was talk about the traffic study that was done in 2018. This traffic study was done for Panner Creek Estates, not Broad Meadows. Also, the traffic study did not take into account the dangerous curves on Gopher Flat Road. The city is well aware of the dangerous roadway, and not one more house should be built that needs to access Gopher Flat until something is done to make it safer. The city owes this developer nothing. He failed to pay park and recreation fees on the homes he completed. He cut down hundreds of oak trees, including many heritage oaks, and failed to plant any new trees per the development agreement. He has proven that he cares nothing about our city or our neighborhood. He has not only not paid required fees, he has not met many of the original conditions of approval. Also, the owners of this property have never cleared it of weeds after it is posted yearly by Sutter Creek Fire, thus creating a fire hazard for the surrounding homes. Why is the city negotiating with this developer to annex 10 additional lots into the city when we currently have dozens of lots, as Mike just was saying, within city limits? Considering that our sewer system is outdated and water in Amador County is a huge concern. In closing, I would like to suggest that if nothing else, the city require a bond to ensure that we are not left with all of this happening again, that we are not left again with this developer owing us thousands of dollars, not having met any agreements he made upon approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mark Koenig, 230 Golden Hills Drive. Yeah, I'm going to be very short on this. My concern is water and sewer. Our sewer system is at capacity right now, okay? From what I understand, the city had, the sewer system is going to have a project at the corner of Hanford and Gopher Flat to increase service in the sewer there. How long is that going to take, number one? And number two, what's that going to be for the consistency of bringing more sewage down from where we live? Okay. The other thing is water. Right now, we were told during the Planning Commission that this project is assured of having water hookup without any issue. Well, as been pointed out, There are other properties in the city that will need water hookup also. And we haven't got that. We got plenty of water. It's the water that is being purified and brought into our system that is the big concern. So adding, that's just 10 lots, again, it's just 10 houses. But what is that going to do to impact our water service to the entire city? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jenny Rowerdink. I live at 410 Broadmeadows. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I feel it's necessary. I come to you as a concerned mom for safety. I come to you as a nature lover, and I come to you as a realist. I grew up in a large city and moved here for a better life, for a better way of living. I saw my city that I grew up in approve and approve and approve projects that were not smart growth. I think with this issue, we need to think about what is smart growth and what is not smart growth. I hear a current planner that just spoke on infill. We already have open lots within our city limits that are ready to be developed. So why are we considering this project? I also come to you as a mom with teenagers. This school year just started. Almost every day a bus route has been canceled. If I am at work and my husband is at work and we are out of town working, my daughter has had to walk up Gopher Flat. This is a major safety concern for my 14-year-old daughter. She, in fact, has been ran off the side of the road at those curves. I am afraid for her life when our buses are canceled and she has to walk that road. This is not smart growth. Additionally, today I went out and measured not only the blue oak that I saw on lot 5, but also the valley oak that is also located on lot 5. It's 109 inches around. And if you do the math to find the diameter of it, you will find that it is 34.7 inches in diameter. I believe that's either an inch short of being a heritage oak or maybe even classified as a heritage oak. But my point being that we have already lost so many resources, so many oak trees with the development of Panner Creek that will never happen. And I do not want to lose one more heritage oak due to this project. This is housing our raptors that we have nesting right now. This is housing the owls that I hear at night. Last week, our tarantulas came out of that lot. This is not smart growth. Let's look at something else. Let's look at infill. We can do better, Sutter Creek. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Anyone else?
Madam Chairman, council members, Frank Cunha, I also live in Golden Hills. I'm not here to talk about the issues of this project, which are many, and I have to thank the council because I didn't expect you to be as prepared tonight as you have been. You have asked great questions. I'm here because I was a planning commissioner in Sutter Creek for 16 years. In those 16 years, I read every single agenda and packet from the council and the planning commission. And I don't want to direct this to Aaron, but this is the most biased staff report that I have ever read. It appears that staff has determined that you will approve this tonight. So why are you even here if staff is going to make all your decisions? They gave you all the reasons to approve it, none to disapprove it. They didn't even bring up the majority of the planning commission's discussions that night. It's just a shame. Annexation, have any of you been through annexation before? Annexation is a very difficult process. Were any of you informed by staff on what it takes, what the process really is to do an annexation? The annexation is not a property right, and I asked Derek to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But annexation isn't a property right. These property owners and the developers are asking this council to basically increase the value of their property that they purchased. Their property is pre-zoned RL. That is one house per half acre. Staff has proposed not only the part that's bringing into the city now, residential single family or R1, which will allow 6.22 houses per acre, but they're also proposing what the county has designated as residential estates. They're proposing to pre-zone that R1. R1 designates a minimum of 7,000 square foot per acre. Now, question for Derek. Does the new California state housing law apply to Sutter Creek? In other words, it's well known that somebody that owns a lot can go to the desk and split his lot into two. He does not have to apply for anything. On that lot, he can put up his own house. He can split it. He can put up another house. He can put additional houses on there for whatever, okay? So this isn't just 10 lots, okay? This is a huge, huge undertaking that the city needs to take seriously. Our general plan, as Mike stated, clearly states that the city will encourage infill development prior to considering an annexation. This is what the Planning Commission based their findings on. The city has over 1,000 acres of buildable property within its boundaries. Gold Rush Ranch, Powder House Estates, Phase 3 of Golden Hills, Phase 2 of Crestview, Bryson Street subdivision, and dozens and dozens of single-family lots. This annexation makes absolutely no sense. Plus, this developer owns numerous lots within the city limits that are buildable. The only reason he's coming to you tonight and asking for an annexation, money. He will make a lot of money on these lots. The owners of the property will make a ton more money on their property now that it's pre-zoned R1. Being you really haven't been, and I'm not that educated on annexation, but these are the questions you really need to look at and ask yourself before you vote on these.
That's 5 minutes.
That's 5 minutes?
I didn't say it, she did.
Okay, I'll end up. There's a ton of questions. And really, it basically, this annexation has to benefit the city. It has to be a benefit to the city, not a detriment. Okay, will this improve traffic on Gopher Flat? Will it improve our schools, including lessening the class size? Will it be an improvement to our city parks? Will it create affordable housing? Will this improve our pedestrian and bicycle pathways? Will this annexation create a lighting and community facilities district? These are just a few questions. You have brought up a lot of your own. So Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Frank?
Thanks, Frank.
My name's Robert Burge. I reside at 300 Golden Hills Drive, and I have been in that residence since 1976. A lot of you may have not even been born yet, but I've seen it from the beginning. I saw how the city council treated me and others with TNH, Toma, Nennis, and Havens. Wish Jimmy was here tonight because I have the question for him. Why hasn't the hill been cut off that his dad donated to the city years ago to eliminate that curve? If you go out there right now, you'll see the post in the field that lines it out. That should have been addressed with TNH and Swift at that time when TNH was improving the road, and they could have cut that corner then.
Sorry, Robert, can you tell us what TNH is? Those of us that weren't born in 1976
Toma, Nennis, and Havens were the
The develop.
developers.
of the
Meadowcrest
Meadowcrest. Okay.
West. They're the ones that dropped the palm or dropped the ball. And that's what happened in the city council back then when you had the good old boy thing going on. So I've been through this whole mess all my life. And I said, last meeting, I'm done with thinking about it. But I guess I'm not. Am I, Dan? Yeah, I just don't understand how that corner, that PG&E pole has been taken out twice and eliminated power to that subdivision. Two kids took that pole out. They could have lost their lives. There were residents out there. And it's, yes, Gopher Flat, the corner that everybody struggles with getting around. And for years, I ran the loop from my house all the way around the creek and back. I got run off the road more on this volcano Sutter Creek Road than I ever thought about getting run off up there on that corner. This is your dangerous road as far as I'm concerned. But the county and the city should have collaborated in that route when that whole upper country of Shake Ridge was developed, because they knew what it was going to bring down Gopher Flat into Main Street, Sutter Creek. They knew at that time I could hit golf balls across that road out there up until the 90s. There wasn't any cars. And that all should have been a collaborative effort because they knew that was going to happen. And it's this whole county is that way. They just keep approving, and nothing is done to the central streets and roads that come together. Never has been addressed. We have a bypass, but until that bypass, Golden Hills was going to be the connector and the dream of everybody that was on the council and the planning commission to take Shake Ridge Road to Ridge Road. And it was going to go over the hill before that bypass came on. That was the dream. So Golden Hills Drive was going to be a main thoroughfare. And when I approved and gave them my property in an agreement, that was nowhere in that. They would have never got an agreement from me if I'd have known what the real plan was going to be. So that's what you guys do to us.
All right, I wasn't gonna speak, but here I am. My name is Megan, live on Broadmeadows Court. My property is adjacent to the cutoff. But right now, we're up against the county line. When we bought the property, we knew that. We said, oh, the county line goes straight through the road. This probably will be developed, but probably not because it's county property. So going into that, however many years ago, we thought, well, it looks like it should be developed. If you go out there, you think, oh, it's not finished. But then there's all these other things. So to your question, and I appreciate all your questions because they were very thorough and appropriate. But I think it was you that asked, I think it's a convenient time to resubmit this, right? Because everything has expired. All those old 1, 2, 3, and 4 have expired. It's very convenient because now they're not part of this new plan, right? The 10 lots are now their own plan legally on paper, which I get it. I work in corporate America. This is all we're looking at, these 10 lots. But I think to your point, all the contingencies are in that last Panner Creek plan. That probably won't happen. So my ask is that if you choose to annex the property in, if you choose to develop it, I beg of you to do it the right way. I feel like this whole county is kind of known for not being thorough, and I appreciate how thorough you have been with your questions and your concerns. But I think it's time to be really thorough because you are looking at 10 lots on paper legally, right? But if all these contingency promises and dreams and additions to the community are part of this Panner Creek plan or in a different plan that may not happen, then you're losing the end result. So that's all.
Thank you, Megan. Anybody else? Bruce, did you want to speak again, or we have the other applicants on Zoom, right? I can't see them to ask them if they want to speak. Aaron, can you help with that?
Madam Mayor, there's been a lot of material presented this evening. Some of it we thought we had addressed previously, but some of it keeps coming up. I have not had a chance to sit down with city staff and go over all of the items that have been raised. What I would suggest, if the council is amenable, is that we schedule a workshop so that we can go through each item and get a definitive answer or definitive information so that you are all aware of all of the nuances and history and counter this and counter that have been presented. We don't see any other way to try to move this project forward. If this project doesn't move forward, that's kind of in the planning world, that's kind of the beginning of the end of the community. You know, in the last 5 years, the city has lost 91 persons. So your population is 91 less than it was 5 years ago. Your persons per household 5 years ago was 2.09. You're now down to 2.01. So you're just barely over two, on average, citywide, you barely have 2 people per household. As I believe Councilmember Reardon pointed out, there have been no new single-family homes constructed in Sutter Creek in the last 12 months. In my count, from about 2010, the 2010 census to the till now, 24 years, there have been approximately 17 single-family homes constructed and 1 duplex. Those are not healthy for a community. And so we've tried everything we know how. We're providing additional storm drainage improvements that will help the houses on the south side of Broadmeadows Drive. We've had studies done that demonstrate there are no impacts. And we tried, at one point, we tried to do a combined document, an environmental impact report that included both Broadmeadows and Panner Creek. But it was like trying to compare apples and oranges. For all intents and purposes, Broadmeadows has no environmental impacts. All of the infrastructure's in place, the streets built, sewer, water, storm drainage is all in place. The lots have been rough graded. There is no environmental effects that would be caused by this problem, by this subdivision. Panner Creek, on the other hand, has lots of environmental issues. And that when it came down to it, we felt the only way that we could address it was to have it done as a separate project. So my ask for the council tonight is to schedule a workshop so we can get into the detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? I think we need that, right, Derek? Yeah.
Sure, I move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Claire, at this point, I'm not sure if it's appropriate. I'd like to respond to what Bruce was talking about right there, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, or I was going to suggest we have a brief recess since the public hearing's closed.
Oh, recess?
How about 7 minutes?
Recess? We're gonna go get a snack? Recess?
We'll have a
Sure.
quick recess.
You know, one question, Frank.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, feeling good. Okay. Yeah, but now she's alone after 75 years. Well, hell, I knew him for over 70 years. Jesus. No lip. My dad. Yeah. Wow. No, yeah, and that's what I told my brother, who's next. We are. I'm 72. Yeah. So, you know, I'm on bonus time. That's the way I look at it. I'm on bonus time. Anyways, I just wanted to say. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Or you can put a duplex on each one or whatever.
Yeah. I've got a video in here when I first researched this from a realtor, and you can literally take one lot. and have four. You know, I'm not saying everyone would do that, but there's a potential.
Okay, Mark. Right. I think that, you know, other people say that you buy a certain amount. Oh. That's where you go. I don't definitely sure. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's, you know, if you could do that.
And then if we could, see what everybody else says, it could be, Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been over there.
If you can all sit down, we can bring the meeting back to order. All right, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. The public hearing is closed, so we're at council now. I'd like to start at the beginning of the table and maybe have each council person update us on where you're at this moment and exactly how much information and what we're going to need to go on from here. Dan, do you want to start?
Sure. I'd be happy to. A couple of things. Derek, I just wanted clarification on the question that was raised regarding the Senate bill and the housing with the ADU and that kind of thing.
Yes.
As it
so-
relates to this project.
Yes, no, Mr. Cunha, Frank is correct. What this law allows is for division of the lots. So what could happen, I mean, is that these 10 lots are entitled, they're created. So you get the lots are created, you get your white paper from the Department of Real Estate. You've got a sellable lot.
Yeah.
And once you sell that lot, the developer could do, the developer, instead of building the house and then selling it, the developer could just sell 10 lots to 10 different people. And then each of those people could use this new SB 9 and basically create 2 lots out of their 1 lot.
Gotcha.
Okay. Okay, so now, yeah, so as Aaron is pointing out, there are some environmental conditions. So and I think she's right, they're high fire zones, which this is, I think we're in a state, are we in a SRA or? Okay. We're not in an SRA, okay. There may be, I guess the point is, there may be, in theory, you can do that. There are some environmental restrictions, but I would say that anyone can do that right now with a family lot here in town. I mean,
Sure.
it's not, it is, Frank is right, it is something that could happen.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. Then the other things I'd like to say, I want to say just a few things, and then Julie, I'll pass it on down to you. So for the record, I'm not anti-growth at all. I think smart growth is smart, and I think Sutter Creek needs it. Bruce, in terms of taking you up on the offer to workshop this thing a little more, I would only be interested in that if you had some reason to believe that the owner/developer is really going to get serious about helping to mitigate the issues we've been talking about all night long, vis-a-vis Gopher Flat Road, straightening that thing out, bike paths, all that stuff. But I'm not interested in rehashing 20 years of history because, frankly, we've been instructed to leave all that behind tonight. So I get a little topsy-turvy about the whole thing that way. So unless you think your folks are really willing to give more, very clearly, to give more, then I would forego that, and I would not be inclined to overturn the Planning Commission's denial. That's where I stand.
Thanks, Dan. Julia?
I'm going to interchange the word smart growth and use it the same thing, maybe just semantics, but responsible growth. Our city should relish vitality. Our city should relish having new faces and people come in and move in and become part of our city. And I can only say that because I came in, because I don't have 3 generations of family that lived in Amador County before me. I came in and appreciate the small town, and I've been in here since 86, 85. So I believe responsible growth is different than just approving for a subdivision. I would like to see, Bruce, also some things addressed that we brought up. And I think they all come around and center around safety. And even though they are separate projects than the original phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's a history that builds, I think, a context. And I think has to be some openness, willingness to say, we can make this work for those that live around. For the people that are going to buy their 10 lots, those lots and those residents are going to affect the other residents around. And we want a neighborhood where everybody wins. And I think that's going to mean that the developer owner maybe consider some modifications. One that I flew by a couple is taking lot 5 that has the oaks. The park that was supposed to be included in, and I know they're separate, 1 and 2, that was never developed, but encourage people maybe to come in and buy. Take that lot 5. It's one of the smaller lots. I think it's 2,400 square feet. Anyway, take that and make it an open space park. Throw a bone out to the other residents who have been affected by the history and make that a win. There's still development. There's a piece that could happen to make everybody, more willing to be a part of this in terms of the other residents. And it's still a win for the city for growth. That's my thoughts. But I would also only probably participate in something where that kind of dialogue can take effect. Otherwise, I'm willing to say, hey, take this back to the Planning Commission, hash some things out, and come back to us again. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Susan?
Thank you for the staff information and for everyone showing up and voicing your opinion. I'm of the thought that the zoning, I'm okay with changing the zoning. I'm okay with the development, but I'm not okay with veering away from the general plan that we want a walkable, bikeable community. I think that we're really blessed that we have a town that was developed before the automobile. And if we infill correctly, we could not have some of the larger suburban problems that you see, that you're just stuck in your car or your kids can't walk anywhere. And there's a problem with the busing. And, I think of the mothers that are at work in Sacramento and you get this email at 2:00 that there's no bus. Great. Okay. How does your kid get home? So I think that we have a really unique opportunity to grow in a lovely way that is, people don't have to get in their car. And then with regard to the open space, I think that's a great idea, Julia, and possibly with this what's it? Panner Creek, maybe that land could possibly be open space and mitigate. There's environmental as well as mental health perks to having open space. And in having the infill, we can preserve all this beautiful land around us. This is why we're here. No one moved here I didn't move here to live in Folsom. And yeah, I thank you for everyone for their comments. And with regard to the trees, I agree as well. If we can preserve any mature trees in this development, I think that's imperative. And I also have seen oak mitigation that doesn't work at all. I think the bypass trees that were all put on where the land trust is now, they're almost every single one of them is dead. So I think that we should hold the developer, like any developer, accountable for not only planting trees, but bringing in arborists, educating the landowners on how to keep those trees alive, and truly mitigating the trees getting cut down, not just like this, we planted a tree and there you go. So thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I too am not anti-growth, and I hear what Bruce is saying about the small number or no homes that we've built every year and the declining population. And there is infill, there is all these buildable lots, but no one's building in them. And this is a person who's willing to build. But that said, I brought this, which is the petition probably a bunch of you signed, which was the first piece of paper I think I got when I sat down on city council. Frank brought it to me, and the date on here is January 2018. I sat on city council in 2020, and at that point, it had never made it to a meeting. And this has everyone in the neighborhood, I think, but one's signatures. And it's addressing the fact that there's no pedestrian access to town. And we have, potentially deadly situation. I walk all over Sutter Creek. You see me. I don't walk that. Certainly my kids would never walk it. And Maddie, or Jenny, you could call me if Maddie needs a ride. So I don't feel that we can responsibly add any homes, even 10, to that neighborhood without somehow mitigating that. If the developer wants to sit down with the planning commission and the city and work something out, over the 4 years that I've been sitting here, there's been lots of ideas about using the Swift land to straighten Gopher Flat, talking to the Rancheria about a path. Lots of options. I've never heard definitively that any of them can't work, but I've never seen anyone really try to make them work. So if the developer or just this situation that we find ourselves in right now would initiate that process, then I could certainly consider it. But at this time, I wouldn't be inclined to approve anything until that's mitigated.
So Derek, at this point, listening as you just have, how do you recommend we move forward?
What I'd recommend is a straw poll from each of you. And the question would be, is there some scenario where you might, emphasize might, support this project? If the answer is yes, then we can talk about how we can workshop this, refer to planning commission. We could talk about that. But if you're a majority of you, as you sit here today, after all you've heard, believe that you're not going to get to a place where you can support the project, where, at least as it is currently, then you may want to just consider taking an up or down vote. So that would be my suggestion, is just a quick straw poll.
To clarify that, so if we took that straw poll, and if the question is if we could support this or not, or because I'm just going to take me, for instance, I could consider it if it came back with some aspect that solved the pedestrian access to town. So that wouldn't be this. It would have to be a new.
So that, I guess the question is, can you support this project or can you support a project? If a majority of you think you could support a project, then I think after the straw poll, we can talk about how best to send this back, workshop it, have staff work on it, talk to the developer. So I guess that's the question then, is, can a majority of you support a project? I'm not saying, can you? I'm not saying you will. I'm not saying you have to. But as you sit here tonight, if you were thinking, look, I'm just never going to support this project for, it's just not the right thing. I don't want to bring it in. There's too many issues. If you're never going to get to that place, then, is it worth having further development? But if you think you might be able to support something, or you want to look at this in another way, then that's what we need to know. So I guess that's, if you could take that straw poll, then we can work with you to figure out how to go forward.
My concern with that, and what you're saying, and it makes sense, is that just by listening to our comments, I don't want to call it a laundry list, but I think there's some real significant issues that, and I'm not going to speak for any of you. I have some serious issues before this would move forward. And it would involve the pedestrian access, safety, and providing a community, a subdivision that would match what the general plan asked for. because I think there's some things that I'm not willing to accept the mitigation and just say that it's not a problem. So, and I'm not making that slight that that's what the response is, but I have serious issues that, with the safety pedestrian and being able to have but still, like I said, there is a way to have a win-win-win. The city could win by getting that annexation.
So it seems like you are open to seeing what kind of revisions they could come up with.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so it may be helpful to compile that huge laundry list, give that to the developer, because that may kill their project financially. It may not, but it will, it puts the
Would
ball
that
back
not
in
be
their
a
court.
process
Let-
that would happen at the planning commission level?
Let's
though?
do this. Here's a suggestion. Let's go through the four of you. Outline your concerns. Each of you outline your concerns. We will take that as a laundry list. And then what I would recommend is that you remand this to the planning commission to reconsider the project in light of the concerns. And then what staff will do is with that laundry list of concerns, we will go to the developer and we will see if the developer can modify the project. Maybe it can, maybe it can't, but then we'll take what we can take back to the planning commission, have them vet all of this, and then we'll have them make a new recommendation to you. Maybe the recommendation will still be not to recommend the project, maybe it won't, but that might be a way to proceed, because I don't think, it doesn't sound like any of you are ready to make a final decision tonight. So that
Well,
might be
based
the.
on the options that are given in our packet, I'm not in a position where I could say I would approve this. I would send it back to the planning commission. But
But
you're
Derek-
saying, send it back to the planning commission with our recommendations for revisions. Do you really want us to do that all tonight? Go through, because if we did that, I would like time to be able to go back and make it articulate, the things that I might not have even touched on.
I'd ask another question instead, because what we're tasked with tonight is ruling on these resolutions. And one of these resolutions is to certify the initial study, neg deck, as having fulfilled, all the aspects of the general plan. And I think we've all very clearly pointed out that it does not. So at that point, and the planning commission's already brought up the same concerns that we have, and we've brought them up. So if the neg deck, in fact, does not pass this muster, then it would have to go, if it was revised, it would have to go back to the planning commission anyways, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what,
Well,
Yeah.
we can table the vote, right? And refer it back to the planning commission?
but I don't know why, because what's right here is what we're voting on.
So.
Yeah.
Let me, what the mayor is suggesting is that the council could refer the matter, the council could determine that it is not ready to approve the negative declaration and send the matter back to the planning commission for purposes of addressing the areas that you've pointed out in the in the negative declaration.
And then it would be up to the owner/developer to come and work with the planning commission and say, we're willing to do this, this, and this, and this, because we've already articulated each and every one of our concerns.
Yeah.
Bruce is sitting right here. The folks are on the line. I don't want to waste a bunch of time.
Correct.
So, why wouldn't we just deny the appeal? Bruce, take it back to your folks, and if they're serious about it, bring another deal with some more meat on the bone from what you're hearing here. And if they don't want to do that, okay. But let's not go down a road where we're spending a bunch of time workshopping something where we've had no indication so far that the folks are willing to do any of these things, or we would have seen some kind of indication. I haven't seen it. So I don't want to waste a bunch of time, frankly. I would, move that we deny the appeal and put it on their shoulders.
I agree with Dan, except for the fact that the agenda, what's in front of us, doesn't have us move to deny,
You can deny the appeal.
or would the motion, we could find the mitigated neg deck and specific plan incomplete because they don't address or mitigate the public safety issues we brought up.
Well,
Because
and
if we
even
just-
past
so-
public safety, I think city
Hang on a second,
planning.
Susan, let's,
So I think a simple motion to deny the appeal is all you need to do,
okay,
because the resolutions are there in case, so I just,
Right, I understand.
yeah, the resolutions are there in case you approve the project. We have to, as staff, we have to present you a way to approve the project. You don't have to approve the project, but if you just deny the appeal, then the applicant, first of all, then the applicant can decide, does it want to move forward?
Exactly.
And then if the applicant wants to move forward, we can we can work with the applicant, and then we obviously have the recording, and we can take notes from the recording, and we can identify the CEQA concerns you all have raised.
Right.
So, I mean, in light of everything I'm hearing, the denial of the project doesn't mean that the applicant can't work with us.
Of
and
course.
Good.
go
thank
back.
you.
That's
Yeah,
what
it's
actually
just
I
a
wanted-
denial of the
Yes.
appeal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to deny the appeal.
I second the motion.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Wait, we take a roll call vote?
Oh, okay. Karen, can you take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Feist,
Yay.
Councilmember Reardon,
Aye.
Councilmember Sarek,
Aye.
Mayor Genzelman.
Aye.
It's 4-0.
That's all on our agenda tonight, although I can't find my agenda in here anymore.
I think you're right, though.
Yes.
I think that's it. Okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.